a little bit about your Bootleg Universe and kind of how it came about, because I think a lot of readers and listeners won't know, maybe they won't know about it, and I think that we should give them kind of a primer on it to get started here.
Sure. And feel free to like jump in if I'm starting to veer off topic.
Oh yeah, of course.
I do that. So in 2012, I released my first fan film based on the Marvel character, the Punisher. The fan film starred Thomas Jane, who also played the Punisher in the 2004 Lionsgate movie. Ron Perlman was also in it. That fan film was directed by a friend of mine, Phil Giuliano. So what the Bootleg Universe essentially is, they're one way to look at it is it's fan films, and I'm using air quotes, fan films. But they're not just basic fan films, because there's like there's an attempt in it to dissect the properties, to peek behind the curtain, to subvert, to quote unquote put a spin on it. So the second one was a black and white found footage mock doc. I'm using a lot of air quotes right now. It's a black and white found footage mock doc of Venom. The Spider-Man villain Venom. Truth in Journalism, exactly. There was a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers one that was like an examination of how that show, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, it's cool. I loved it. Was obsessed with it as a kid. It's also a show about an alien that comes to a bunch of kids and gives them weapons to fight other aliens. So it's, there's like a child soldier element there, that PTSD child soldier element that we wanted to explore. That one.
You use the word subversion, and I really like that, because that kind of came up when I was doing my research, and I was noticing, like with the Pokemon fan trailer that you guys did, where it was like this darker, people don't usually associate Pokemon with darkness, but I think what you were able to do was do this like post anime series trailer thing, and I thought it was a really cool way to subvert. That's the exact word that came up. I was like, with these projects, he's subverting and he's kind of challenging what we think we know about these properties, in a lot of really cool ways. And I think that one of the things that I really like about this body of work is that you're letting your fandom and your love for these things kind of inform your projects, right? It's not just about, you're not trying to necessarily inform people. You're trying to kind of like join them in loving these things, but also like it's a more, not critical love, but it's a closer examination of these things through the lens of a fan, right? Like, because you're also a fan.
Absolutely. It was like it's a weird intersection, having some distance now from it. It's a weird intersection between me being an obsessive fan, me being an artist, and me having this need to poke the bear, so to speak, or to.
And having the context, the contacts and the resources to do that in a really cool way, like I think that not everybody has the access to talent. I mean, I couldn't call up Thomas Jane today and be like, hey, you want to be in a movie, in a fan movie with me, that's really cool that you have access and that you can do these things to give it that.
Totally. I mean, not all of them were like that, right? There's like, I think one of my favorite ones is a Hard R Mr. Rogers. One, right? And
it was based on a rumor, right? Like a real rumor about him.
Yeah, kind of rumor, kind of not. But it was, that one was really looking at biopics. It was like a mockery of biopics in a way, because so many Hollywood biopics are made up. They effectively become tall tales, and they're really inspired by the true story and not really, it's like, hey, it would work. It's like the screenwriter and producer get in, they're like, what would work so much better is if we change this date to this date, and this actually happened first, and really, and there's all these like made up elements. And with the Mr. Rogers one, the idea was to just tell a full-on tall tale.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, put this beloved character in an action movie.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, that's such a cool idea, and it's not the way most people would think of Mr. Rogers, you know, like he's not an action hero in most people's heads. He's, you know, friendly neighbor, you know. So one of the things that I really like about, so I just finished watching Guardians of Justice Will Save You, and one of the things I like about it is it really recognizes the pliability of these mediums. Like you play with a lot of different media, like you do the animation, you do the live action, and it's a lot of things that are really meshing together to make this really cool, unique thing. I mean, was that something that was like conscious while you were doing it? Like, where you were like, let's, you know, mash as many different styles together as possible? Like, what was the goal with this particular project?
So, well, with the mixed media aspect, I'm going to address the mixed media aspect of it. That is, this is going to sound kind of weird, but that is how I see the world.
Right.
So if you exist in my head, it's always shifting tones and genres and mediums, and you know, like my memories, half of them are animated.
Yeah, I have a cartoon brain too, so I get it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Because I haven't met anyone who's gone like who's had that reaction.
Yeah, no, I have, like, I'll have moments where I'm like, that would be a hilarious scene in a cartoon, but there's nothing funny about it in real life. But I'm like,
yeah,
this is outrageous enough to warrant being animated. Like,
yeah.
So yeah, I see things play out like scenes in a movie. I definitely get what you're saying. No, that's not weird to me at all.
Yeah. That's really amazing to hear, because I never got that reaction. It's like usually like, what? So like your memories are cartoons sometimes? I'm like, yeah. And it's like not one type of cartoon, right? It's not like, oh man, and you know, it goes from like a live action memory to Hanna-Barbera.
Yeah.
It's like everything. It's like everything. You know, sometimes it's yeah.
So would you say that the film, this film is kind of a reflection? It's kind of like that put to screen, right? Like it's how you put to screen.
Totally. Exactly. It's how I'm like interpreting reality.
Yeah.
Put to screen, or at least it was an attempt to do that. And it's the inspiration. You know, it's the show's not just live action and animation. It's claymation, stop motion. Even within the construct of animation, you have pixel art, 2D, 3D. So really, all said and done, you have north of 32 different styles of animation.
Mm-hmm.
There.
Yeah. It's did you
No, that was it. That was it.
One of the things that I also noticed about it is it's not only kind of it's recognizing the pliability of these things. It's also just celebrating the limitless nature of pop culture. I mean, you can do anything with this, you know, your imagination is limitless. And I think it's really cool that this is kind of just, initially it feels all over the place, but then it comes together and it's like, oh, this is really, really cool. Like, I haven't seen anything like it. And in a lot of, like, so when you were making this movie, did you ever run it by anybody else? Like, how many people did you run it by and were like, hey, you know, does this make sense? Like, were you worried about it making sense to other people, or what was that?
For sure. I mean, I didn't know until pretty recently that it made sense.
Yeah.
It was like, and I didn't get positive reactions until like right at the end, right? And it took 6.5 years to make it, just because of how complicated it was. And it's not like I was getting positive reinforcement. It was like, you're doing what? Why would you do that? Right. It was like that. It was like that kind of thing. You know, if I'd show people like a little piece, it was like, obviously missing chunks, right? Because you're like, okay, well, no. So here, there's this thing that's going to come in, but it's actually claymation, and it's going to transition into animation here, but it's going to be a cartoon, and then you're going to punch the screen, it's going to cut to black, and they'd be like, what is wrong with you? Like, what are you talking about? This is just like, why don't you just place the camera, have the actors act, and then cut it together with another scene where the actors are acting, and then hand that in. What the fuck are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
So it was a lot of that reaction for the most part. Apart from a few people who just believed in me as an artist,
right?
And those were, and ultimately those were the voices I had to just kind of
hone in on.
Hone in on. And everyone else just literally had to be like,
yeah. It was one of those things where, I mean, and I have one of my next questions kind of revolves around the Castlevania show, because that's, for me, that's kind of what I was most familiar with in terms of your work that you know. Mm-hmm. And I also, of course, know Dread, and because you were an executive producer on that. But with the Netflix's Castlevania show, I had read that it was in development hell for a few years before you came on. And so when you came on, what kinds of things did you do, like at the outset, to kind of get things on track? And if I have any of that wrong, please let me know. But like, what was that process?
No. I'm trying to like distill it down into something because this was also a long time ago. So I mean,
it was, yeah.
We pitched Castlevania in
2015.
2015. Yeah, that was 2015.
Because the first season came out in what, 2017 or 2018, right? First season was
2017. Yeah. It was like July 2017.
Yeah.
Kind of came out of nowhere, and I remember I was eating breakfast somewhere close to where I live, and I look up, and one of my favorite Netflix executives, actually my favorite Netflix executive, was sitting right next to him, and he's like, "Addy, your trailer, like what that those numbers are insane."
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool, okay.
Yeah.
Because I was just about to veer completely off topic.
You feel free. You can if you want.
And I stopped myself. I'm good at that now. I'm good at self-censoring. Before I would just be like, you'd ask me a question, like blah, 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 be like a like a Jim Henson Muppet, just spewing stuff around the thing.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, Castlevania was a team effort. One of the beautiful things though about Castlevania that it's not really like, it's not something that I necessarily made public knowledge, because Guardians wasn't, out, or no one really knew about Guardians. But one of the big reasons I was like so gung-ho about jumping into animation was because I needed to learn very quickly how all these different mediums worked. Yeah. And one of the challenges is, like, live action. When you direct in live action, there's a protocol there. There's a way live action works just from a logistics perspective, right? And then on top of that, there's also like unions and formalities to directing in live action.
Yeah.
Finally, there's also things live action's really good at, and there's things live action is not good at, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right. When you direct in 2D animation, completely different. The process is different. The skill set, the way you direct is different. What you get from that is very different. And again, from a strengths and weaknesses perspective, 2D animation is night and day. It's like a different universe, right?
Different animal.
Then when you jump into 3D animation, again, completely different. It's like a different medium altogether. Claymation, same thing. So what Castlevania ended up being an amazing gift for was like just really seeing how 2D animation, like learning 2D animation on a high-end workflow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah, that's so you said that you had to learn those things very quickly so that you could be prepared for Guardians, right? So you could
not even prepared. I mean, I was like doing Guardians and I was like having to learn. I'm like, how do I do this? You know, because I jumped into Guardians without the toolkit, so to speak.
Yeah.
Without the toolkit and without the vocabulary. So I didn't know how to explain some of this stuff because I hadn't done it before, right? It wasn't like I directed a claymation movie a few years ago, and then an animated movie, and then a 3D CGI movie, and then it wasn't like I had a vast library of experience in all these mediums, and now I'm going to bring them all together for this one project. It was like, boom, we're going to do it all. We're going to learn it all on this one project, which was insane.
It seems like there was a lot going on at the time. You were trying to learn a bunch of different things at once. Which honestly had to have been cool and like really elevating as a creator, but stressful too. Just the very nature of it. So as we kind of, so this is kind of my last question. It's what else, like what are some other Bootleg Universe ideas that you are mulling over? I mean, can you tease the future of this besides, beyond Guardians of Justice?
Well, I mean, I think teasing the future is hard. Because off of Castlevania, which again, I didn't mean to dodge your question. I accidentally dodged your question. I wasn't trying to off of Castlevania, that's resulted in, maybe not off of Castlevania. I think it's the entire body of work, but I'm working on a Devil May Cry adaptation. Devil May Cry is a very popular Capcom video game that I loved. So it's awesome to be able to create a Devil May Cry anime universe. Also working on PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds PUBG, making a movie I shouldn't say movie, like a project, like an animated project of PUBG. So on the kind of like the more traditional working within the construct, the apparatus of the Hollywood machine, there's a lot of stuff there, obviously, and also Captain Laserhawk. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's like a shared universe, bizarro,
very vaguely
shared universe of a bunch of Ubisoft's IP in like one bizarro cyberpunk retro futuristic 90s universe that's in production right now. So that's on like the traditional side, right? Like when I say traditional, again, it's going to be me, which is not traditional on as I've come to learn. But then on the bootleg side, it's interesting because I have a lot of regret with the Bootleg Universe. And when I say I have a lot of regret, it comes from I didn't really understand what I was doing when I was doing it. This was just kind of, it was like kind of raw creativity without self-awareness. And obviously, to your point, yes, I got to collaborate with amazing artists like Joseph Kahn, who directed this movie Bodied, and also directed the Power Rangers fan film. Like I had like an Alf one.
Mm-hmm.
Like Alf bootleg, that I even had a script for. The idea was like Alf, Alf, right? The alien. So like Alf was like a working actor who hasn't worked since his sitcom went off the air, and obviously had like a talk show stint in the middle. Alf had his own talk show, and the premise was, Alf is like strung out on drugs. And then a tape leaks, a la Hulk Hogan or any one of these characters. A tape leaks of him saying horrible things, and now he has to go and do the talk show circuit and defend himself, right? Yeah. And through this, you learn of like the inner workings and the seedy nature of the puppet universe, and how like the cast of Sesame Street. They're like horrible fucking people, like,
Yeah,
or like
hilarious.
creatures. And that thing, it was done. I loved it. There was so many like that. I wanted to do Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, with zombies.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like there's a zombie outbreak and you have Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. Like,
yeah.
And then, like, I think that the bootleg universe, when I say there's regret, there was a period in my life where I didn't fully understand what I was doing. There was just raw creativity happening. And I would just kind of wake up and be like, oh, it'd be great if you did this and did that and you mixed it with that and like, and then, getting these things up and running without the support of a giant infrastructure, without a studio, it was challenging, even though I didn't realize it at the time. So that was my way of answering what the future holds. I think the future holds like me looking at the past and going, wow, that's like a really fun thing. I wish that had, that existed.
Well, yeah, I think that's a great answer. I think that it's hard to explain. It's one of those things where I think what you're trying to communicate is just these kinds of things kind of just, they come to you and you pursue them, but you don't really know which way it's going to go until it goes there, kind of thing is what I'm
totally. It's like I'm simultaneously like a control freak, artist, auteur person, while also simultaneously not really being in control of ADI Shankar. Like, this is a being that runs around and just does stuff. And sometimes it's kind of like I'm experiencing my own life like a roller coaster, where sometimes I feel like I get it. And sometimes I feel like, okay, roller coasters,
Well, I mean, there's something to be said about like, just being this comet of creative energy, right? Like, you don't know which way you're going to go because comets can steer any which way. I mean, I think that's kind of cool. I think that some of the best stuff comes from that kind of raw, not frenetic, but like that raw kind of pure creativity, right? And you're able to shape it into something that resembles what goes on in your head. And I think that's, honestly, a beautiful form of, this is why we do what we do, right? I mean, we make sense of the world through our art. And I think that's
totally.
Totally. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh,
you were on this beautiful thing, and I just.
No, it's okay. So I was just kind of saying that it's you give yourself crap for like like going every which way, but I think that it translates into some of your best stuff. Like, I think that part of being a creator is knowing when to steer something and when to let it steer you. Yeah. And it sounds like and some people do way more of one than the other, and it sounds like letting it steer you has worked really well for you. And so I don't think that there needs to be a judgment on it. I think that if that's how you work, lean into it. I think that's awesome.
Totally, 100%, dude. 100%. I feel like. Sorry.
Oh no, it's like so I had this idea. Like, I have so many ideas that I think are dumb, but I tell my friends, I'm like, Hayden, that's hilarious. Like, I had this idea, and it was honestly one of my favorite things that I've ever posted on the internet, but it was like, I had just rewatched the Matrix trilogy. It was right after the trailer for the fourth Matrix movie came out.
Sure.
And I was like, how funny would it be to do like a Sims style Matrix game called Matrix Renovations, where it's like you just like build this like Sims world. It's like a Sims game, but if you figure out the Matrix, if you figure out it's the Matrix, you can like drop clues and stuff. Then a bunch of Smiths will come out of the wall and beat the shit out of you. Like, I thought that was just so.
Dude, that's brilliant. I think that's brilliant. I think that's brilliant, dude. I feel like what we're both tapping into here, it is, once something becomes successful, right? A bunch of suits enter the room and try to reverse engineer why it became successful, right? And and they sometimes focus on the wrong things, a lot of times focus on the wrong things, and they get really obsessed with the mythology of the thing.
Yeah.
Right. So when you look at like Star Wars, perfect example of this, like it's like, okay, there were these Star Wars movies, and this is what Star Wars is, and becomes like very narrowly defined. But like, well, a lot of times, like what it seems like they're missing is this thing wasn't successful because of these arbitrary kind of breaks that you've put on it, these arbitrary cage that you put on it. This thing was successful because a bunch of people, or one person and a bunch of collaborators, started throwing things against the wall.
Yeah.
Until they were like, okay, no, that, now that. And then all of a sudden it's stuck, right? And now that you have this chair that got flung at the wall and stuck to the wall in an angle. And for you to now like sit there and reverse engineer why and at what angle it was thrown at that caused it to stick at the wall.
Yeah.
It's like maybe there's like the universal consciousness. There's different like kind of religions and whatnot that you could look at it, but like on a core level, there's no business apparatus that's ever been able to successfully take that, reverse engineer it, replicate it successfully without diluting it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's the key part, without diluting it. Yes.
Yeah. And so what you just said with like your Sims idea, why I think it's brilliant, right?
Yeah.
Is like the Matrix is not a bunch of people in trench coats dodging bullets. It's just not what it is. What the Matrix is it's a creative output from like two siblings.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all it is, right?
Yeah.
And if you just get hyper locked into, no, it's about bullet time, and it's about this, and the Matrix is a fashion sense, and it's a genre of music, and it's like a like a color palette, and you get hyper locked into all of these aesthetic choices.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're effectively replicating it until it becomes a cliche.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And what you just pitched is like, in a way, a satire of the suit thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. That's why I love it.
Yeah. I was so pleased. It's one of those things like I posted on the internet. I'm like, this is gold. It's just like, I don't have very many moments like that. Like it's the kind of the diamond in the rough.